Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Sonic Advance 3. In the last part we started off the game and got through all of Route 99 and now we've reached Sunset Hill, which is just a time-shifted version of Green Hill down to even having the same main melody for its music. And on that note, I should note Sonic Advance 3's soundtrack is incredible. I know a Sonic game with a good soundtrack, color me surprised. It's not my favorite of the trilogy, I think Advance 2 is on the whole, but still really solid stuff, but worth noting, this is one of those games where there's multiple versions of the same song depending on where you are in the level. The hub world has its own version of a song, and Acts 1, 2, and 3 each also have their own rendition of a song. And I usually have a favorite within every single world. Usually it's the Act 2 or 3, which are usually higher energy versions of the song or have more layers to the instrumentation. But honestly, my favorite version of this specific song is probably Act 1. Though not for nothing, I know a lot of people's favorite rendition of Green Hill Zone is Sunset Hill, at least in terms of the song. I like the start, usually, and the da-da-da-da-da-da portion of it, but once it starts reaching a higher pitch melody coming up here, I won't lie, it kind of hurts my ears at certain points in time. And beneath that rock is our first chow for the world, by the way. So, mechanics writ large for Sunset Hill lean into a few different rods for your characters to grab. Wow, I could have phrased that better, huh? There's these green rubber things you grab onto, and they fling you back in the direction you came from at an upward angle. They're often used to chain from one to another to get up to higher elevations, but if you go around them from the other side, sometimes you might get rewarded with an item box or another route. There's also these hanging rods that kind of look like candy canes that come from any given ceiling. When you run into them like that, you will spin around them as you slowly start sliding down them. If you jump off of them, you will fly in the direction you most recently rotated towards. So if you rotated towards the right, you'll fly right. Towards the left, you'll fly left. There's also a new type of spring for this game in particular we're going to start seeing in this stage. I think in this specific zone, it's colored orange on the top and bottom with a blue actual spring portion. The way those work is that as you're standing on it, they will slowly shrink down. And if you press the jump button, depending on how far it's been pushed down, it'll send you up at varying heights. You need to wait for it to almost be all the way down, but not quite to get the maximum height of it. Here's one right here, actually. If you let it go all the way down, you just do a little short hop along the way. I actually like that type of spring a lot, but I won't lie, it does kind of lean into this game's more stop-and-go level design than Sonic Advance 1 or 2 at large. Also, I'm playing as Tails right now more just to showcase his flight and all that. I do play as every character at least once across the playthrough, I believe, in actual stages, but most of the combos I do show off only through the little showcase sections, like I did with Tails and Sonic at the start of last part, pretty much. I'm largely choosing to do that for one reason. There's some character combos I just do not like using, but I still wanted to showcase them all off in some form. Though there's some abilities per combo I actually don't get to show off because I only really showed them off at the start of Route 99's hub world. And due to that, there's no water for me to use. And for any combo, like with Tails, for instance, who can swim, that means that ability in specific is not being shown off, but I will make note of them existing all the same whenever I showcase a combo in question. Here's the hub world chow for Sunset Hill. Also, I probably should talk about this up front. Route 99 took us an entire part last time. That's not going to be the standard for all the rest of the zones moving forward at large. Usually throughout a video, we're going to do the entirety of a zone and then maybe a stage or so afterwards. The main reason Route 99 took a whole part outside of just the usual intro shenanigans on top of the cutscenes and mechanic showcases for the start of the game largely came down to I was getting used to the game again as I went. I did do a practice run of every stage beforehand, but that also means my practice runs of the first few stages were maybe the first time I had played this game in probably over a decade. As we get through, I get better and better at the game writ large, which should be how it goes to begin with. And that even can be showcased actually in a mechanic I don't even think I brought up last time. There's actually like ranking medals in this game for every stage depending on how fast you go through it. In specific, there are 3 ranks depending on how quickly you clear a stage. Gold, silver, and bronze getting worse as you go. For I think all of last part as well as even the previous stage, if you paid attention when I hit the goal ring, which by the way, the goal rings in this game are very small and easy to over or undershoot if you're trying to get the best time you can. And you may have noticed my goal ring turned blue. That's actively the silver rank. To use that stage as an example, in Sunset Hill Act 1, in order to get the gold medal, you need to finish that stage within a minute and 45 seconds. Getting the silver requires doing that within 2 minutes and 45 seconds, and getting the bronze is just beating a stage outside of the timer required to get the silver medal. I want to say technically getting 100% in this game might require getting all 3 medals per stage, but I just don't care to do that, so I'm just going for all the Chaos Emeralds and everything else on top of that. But moving forward throughout the rest of the game, I will note what times you need to at least get the gold and silver medal. As, hey, it might be a nice little bragging rights thing. The only reason I tend to get, oh god, Sonic, are you okay there? Oh god. The reason I tend to get a lot of silvers, and especially in the early game here, is actively tied to the chows, as due to some of the more obscure routes and corners you need to take in order to find those chow, it often just goes against going quickly enough to actually get a gold medal. But I do try my best as we go throughout the game. Just because we just finished the stage, worth noting that Sunset Hill Act 2's gold requires finishing that stage within a minute and 30 seconds, and getting the silver requires doing so within 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So the giant ring at the start of every zone is actively where you enter the Sonic Factory. You can swap around your character combos for tag actions as well as warp back to prior worlds. But if you go through the door on the left wall, you can find this game's Chow Garden, which is more just a checklist of the Chow you found throughout a given zone. If you hit the select button, you even get this Chow map screen that just shows you the actual breakdown of what Chows are in what stage per world, which is honestly very helpful, especially in the case there's 4 Chow in a given stage. I'm mostly in here right now to change back to Sonic and Tails, though, as in order to unlock my first unlockable character, I need to finish Act 3 of Sunset Hill with Sonic in the lead. That's how you unlock further characters in this game. You need to beat certain Act 3s with Sonic in the lead. I think alternatively, you can just go all the way to the final boss, and upon beating them, if you don't have them all, you unlock them all, I want to say, but if I've ever done that, it was only maybe once, so don't necessarily quote me on that. With that said, it's time for Sunset Hill Act 3. Getting the gold here requires finishing this stage within 2 minutes and 45 seconds. Getting the silver requires doing so within 3 minutes and 45 seconds. And just to go back to Route 99, so I mentioned it outright. To get the gold in Route 99 Act 1, you need to finish that stage within a minute and a half. Getting the silver is 2 minutes and 30 seconds. In Act 2, you need to finish the stage within 2 minutes and 15 seconds to get the gold, 3 minutes and 15 to get the silver. Act 3, you need to finish that stage within 2 minutes for the gold, 3 for the silver. And the bosses also have ranking medals worth noting. To get the boss's gold medal in Route 99, you need to finish that stage within a minute and 45 seconds. And to get the silver, you need to finish it within 2 minutes and 15 seconds. As you can see, largely it's a case where the silver medal is a minute after the gold medal, but there are times later on, I think, where that's not exactly the case, especially as the stages get longer by endgame. Because, oh boy, do the stages get long by endgame in this game. And if they're not long on proxy of actual level design, they're long because you just keep dying in them, especially on a first playthrough. So, Sunset Hill in general has this as a mechanic, but it's especially prevalent here in Act 3. There's a lot of waterfalls you can see in the foreground at some points. Those usually are coming down from a slant and level design elsewhere in the level, and if you actively fall onto that slant, you will get dragged by the waterfall downwards. Thankfully, I think here in Sunset Hill, at least when they do that, that never leads into a bottomless pit, but I want to say in an upcoming stage in one of the upcoming zones, they do let that lead into a bottomless pit, so be careful. With that said, if you fall into the water, you're probably getting dragged by that all the way down. I think you might be able to escape it if you're careful enough with speed, but you're not able to charge up your tag action while you're in that, so watch out for that at large. This is also one of those levels you need to really go out of your way to get one of the chows in, because it's located at like the very top right of the level design, but there's only really one path that leads up there, and, well, again, you might want to make sure you take good advantage of your tag actions here. Not that you have many options to at this point. Again, Tails probably is my overall favorite tag action partner in the game, just because there's so many platforms that are within reach with him in either way, either from midair or on the ground. Break this rock for our next chow here, and I think that's all of them in this zone. With that said, I don't grab the key here because I think at this point with the route I'm on, the only other place the key can show up was on screen where that chow was. So, I should note, unless you're absolutely the type where you only want to find things through your own means and you don't like using any outside sources whatsoever, if you're going for 100% in this game, or at least getting all the Chaos Emeralds, I really recommend you do use maps for this game. GameFAQs has an excellent set of them by Alex_GER that notes where the chows are, as well as where every potential spawn location for the special key is, and that really goes a long way to help smooth out the process here. Though there's exactly, I think, one chow in the final zone they don't mark the position of correctly, which is a little annoying. Either way, Gemeral's back. Whenever you fight Gemeral in an Act 3, that's usually a stage you're going to be able to unlock a character in at the end of it. He gains a new attack there, namely a little somersault where he dives at you, but largely you can just avoid that pretty easily and bump him on the noggin 4 times, and he's out of here once again. Upon hitting the goal ring, you will actively spawn in the next character you can recruit. And of course, because we already have Sonic and Tails, before we unlock anyone else, it's time to complete the trio. Hey, it's Knuckles! What's going on now, Sonic? Maybe you can use my help. Ah, thanks, but no thanks. What? Wait a second, hey! And now we can play as Knuckles, meaning we now have access to a new tag action set, as well as... Knuckles' tag actions are alright. His mid-air one just allows a character to ride on his glide like you actively do with Tails' flight, but you can't climb walls with it. His ground-based one's kind of neat, though, because it allows characters that aren't power-type characters like Knuckles to break power-exclusive type barriers. When paired with Knuckles, Sonic keeps his spin dash and basic jump, but his somersault kick done with the B button is powered up and slides you further. Additionally, pressing the B button while jumping gives you outright the Sonic 3 Insta-Shield back, which is great for enemies and damaging bosses. He also gains a bit of a double jump if you hold up and press B while in midair, and if you press down and B in midair, he does the bounce bracelet attack as well. This is a very aggressive combo that isn't my favorite, but it's far from bad. I've used this one plenty over the years. Tails and Knuckles is definitely an interesting one as well, and that actively showcases one of my issues with the partnership system at large. In this combo, Tails loses his ability to fly and instead gains Knuckles' glide without the wall climbing option. This is something I don't like about Sonic Advance 3's partner system, is that instead of buffing every character with something interesting, some characters actively get nerfed by their partners like that. On top of that, Tails also gains the Insta-Shield, his basic Tails attack is now turned into the Rapid Tails attack from Sonic Adventure, and Tails' dog paddle is actively sped up by Knuckles' presence, so he actively does a bit of a faster movement underwater that can easily be turned. Okay for the rare water level. At this point, let's talk about Knuckles' combo, starting off with another example of characters being nerfed by their partner, Knuckles and Sonic. While he retains the spin dash and all that, Knuckles in this combo can't glide, he instead does a mid-air dash that damages enemies. I don't like using this combo for this alone because it's just so alien feeling for Knuckles. This also normally means he can't climb walls unless in one other circumstance, namely, he actively has a version of his glide underwater that's effectively a breaststroke for faster movement. If you use that into a wall, you can climb those walls. He can also float at the water surface. On top of that, he also has a melee 1-2 punch combo on the ground if you just press the B button. Knuckles and Tails, though, is another one of my favorite combos in the game because this Knuckles controls like his normal self. He can spin dash, his B button is an uppercut that's good for awkward enemy placements, and his glide is actively buffed by Tails, giving him a double jump before going into the glide motion. From there, you can climb walls as he actively should be able to most of the time otherwise. He still also has the breaststroke and floating ability he has with Sonic actively that only gets changed if he's paired with certain other characters. I'm going to be mostly using Knuckles and Tails as a combo with him, though I think I do use at least one other combo with him later on. I don't quite recall, though, because to an extent, this game kind of blurs together in my mind as I recorded most of this game between the hours of 2 to 5 a.m., depending on the day. So not only was I usually a little more tired than usual, often the memories just kind of blend into my dreams I probably had that night to begin with anyway. At this point, though, I need to go looking for the special key, and I often recommend doing it here in Sunset Hill in Act 1, because you might get lucky and it's in an early place once again. I think usually the Act 1s tend to have a special key placement that can show up, like, at the very start of the level, otherwise, they tend to be pretty early on. I think there are routes looking at maps where you can actively check every special key location in a stage in one run, but honestly, I'd only really recommend checking maybe the first 3 from there. If it's not present, I'd actively recommend just pressing the start button and selecting the back command to go back to the level to select and either restarting the level from there to check some of the other options, as it might have respawned, or just go check a different level, because it might work out that way. Now, I actively can't remember if I said this last time, so forgive me if I'm repeating something here. I actively am unsure about one thing with the special keys, and future me may have already checked this if I brought this up last time. I'm not sure if you can collect the special key and then just press the start button to head back to the hub world from there, or if you need to finish the stage. I've always been the type who finishes the stage in a case like that, just in case, though, because I don't want to potentially lose the thing I just spent minutes searching for. The main reason I think I'm right about this is if memory serves, if you have a special key on you in a level and die with it, you lose it and need to find it in the stage again if memory serves. Now, it could just be a case of the special key will stick with you no matter how you get back to the hub world, as long as you do, be it through the pause menu back option or by finishing the stage. But I'm not about to risk my luck for something I'm not entirely sure of. Also, worth noting, I don't do this in the LP because actively going out of my way to go back to the Sonic Factory is just tedious enough where I didn't want to do it too often. But every single character does have a unique set of sprites for them being in the special stage as the lead character. I think I show off at least 2 other characters doing this throughout the game, but I don't showcase all 5 playable characters doing this. So this special stage introduces this gray kind of bullet-looking enemy. They fire projectiles at you as they go, but if you actively manage to time a jump into landing on top of one of them, you will defeat them, and doing that actively does give you a bonus of 5 rings. Most of the special stages don't require you to do that, but as you get later into it, there's times they definitely want you to do it, so watch out for that and get used to the distance of it. That's probably honestly one of the hardest things to do in these special stages, is just judging where they are in distance compared to you. It's like the only depth perception issue I have in these special stages, barring the occasional bomb being a little awkward to dodge in some cases just because of how fast the sprites might be moving. With that, we've wrapped everything in Sunset Hill that's not the boss fight, so it's time for us to go finish off the exploration of the hub world and find the fight so we can move on to our third zone. And honestly, getting a little ahead of ourselves here, I love the boss fight here in Sunset Hill. It's one of my favorites in the game. It's one of the more basic in concept, but it's just really fun to execute well. We're not going to be fighting General before the boss this time, though. We only do that in zones where we don't actively gain a character. The boss here in Sunset Hill is the Egg Ball 2, a follow-up to the boss from Casino Paradise in Sonic Advance 1. This ball is much larger and rolls around the entire perimeter of the room. You just need to time your jumps into the dome that he's actively in carefully. As he gets further into the fight, he does roll back and forth faster and faster, can even roll along the ceiling. And you can hit him while he's on the ceiling if you actively just throw yourself well enough with certain characters, but also there's this platform here to give you some extra air. But this is actively more here to avoid Eggman if he rolls too quickly along the floor, because otherwise you're not jumping over him. Now, there is something that can happen in this game that's kind of annoying that doesn't happen too often to me just by happenstance, but I've seen happen to a lot of other players much more regularly, and it's a follow-up, and by follow-up I mean the exact same thing that can happen in Sonic 3. Namely, the partners aren't too aggressive towards boss fights or enemies, but every now and then as you jump around, they will gain a hit in on a boss fight, which can be really nice in some circumstances, but that also means there's times where they might hit the boss fight right as you're about to, and you'll either clip through them or actively take a hit trying to damage them, and it's entirely something you cannot control, and it's real rough when it happens. There are times you can kind of play to your advantage if you can manage to kind of lead a character into it, kind of like Link slinging them around like with the ring mechanic in Knuckles Chaotix. But if it doesn't happen intentionally, which is most of the time it happens, it's definitely angering. And honestly, I think it feels a lot worse here than it did in Sonic 3, if only because of the extra ring mechanics there are to the Advanced Trilogy as well as the Rush games. Before I continue getting into that topic, worth noting, in order to get the gold medal in that boss fight, you need to beat it within 90 seconds. To get the silver medal, you need to beat it within 2 minutes. Welcome to Zone 3, Ocean Base. Despite its name, this actively isn't that waterlogged a zone, though. There is water in some of the stages, namely towards the bottom of the level design, but the main mechanic here is actively sandfalls like this that you need to mash the jump button to get up like it's Sandopolis Zone in Sonic 3. Moving into Act 1, I'm going to start by saying I love Ocean Base's song. All three variants of it feel more like Mega Man Zero tracks at times, but it's just such kick-ass music. Also worth noting, the first 2 acts in this zone are very vertical in nature, so falls are actively going to be pretty costly here depending on what character combo you're going in with. It's actively part of why I'm going to be using Tails and Knuckles a lot here, is I can use them to game some of the level design a little more easily. So here in Act 1, in order to get the gold medal, you need to finish this stage within 3 minutes and 30 seconds. To get the silver medal, within 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Yeah, we go up to 3 to 4 minute levels very quickly in this game, as you can see. That wall there can only be destroyed by power-type characters, so either by Knuckles or characters partnered with him who gain power-type attacks overall. It's not the only way you can grab that chow. There was a platform directly above me, and I think from there you can just get above the spikes to get there. But as you can see, it's overall faster to do that with Knuckles. Oh, God. So I briefly brought up last time, this game has quite a few blocks that can easily crush you. It's because of circumstances like what we just saw there, where due to the screen ratio that all 3 Sonic Advance games have, you're often going to be moving very quickly and not be able to see what's coming ahead of you that well. And thus, in cases like that where there's blocks that can crush you that you're speeding towards, you're not going to be able to react to them in time. Now, worth noting, I'm climbing up these walls. I'm technically doing this little section here backwards. You're meant to fall down these shafts after grabbing the chow at the top of them. But I know I can climb this with Knuckles, so I'm doing it this way. Otherwise, you'd actively have to backtrack through a lot of the level to do this properly. And, well, I'm not about to do that now, am I? Going back to the prior topic, though, Sonic Advance 2 technically had a few cases like that as well, where there was a sudden crusher or a sudden spike you really didn't have time to react to due to that game's blistering speeds. And honestly, I think in both games' cases, it could have been at least somewhat addressed if they actively took into account more the screen ratio we're dealing with, and maybe brought in a system that Sonic CD had, where when you're at very high speeds, you pan the camera more to the right so you can see more of what's ahead of you. The game does that a little bit in some cases. We just saw it there a little bit with the rail. But I think if they more actively applied that to pretty much any speed that's near the cap or in the boost mode state, it'd be a lot easier to react to things in these two games in specific. I can react well enough in Sonic Advance 2 because I think that game's design is better suited to the speed you're dealing with. But in Advance 3, it's just real rough to deal with. On that front, I will say, the older I get, the more I go, yeah, no, Advance 2 is probably my overall favorite, but Advance 1's probably the best designed levels of the set on the whole. When it comes to other mechanics you can see in Ocean Base in general that we've already seen in this specific stage, or at least you can see, there's these hole-filled cannons that will actively shoot you directly upwards at certain speeds and angles that are advantageous to reach certain routes in the case you're not using certain character combos. But also there's these propeller platforms that feel like they're right out of Skyrail from Sonic Adventure 2, where they have a button on top, and when you jump on it, they slightly start spinning propellers and move upwards. So in order to get them going full speed at full height, you need to jump on them several times in a row, which feels like it should be stop and go, but honestly, it actively feels pretty fast to deal with. Also, Knuckles is really good for this stage if you can't tell from the way I've just gotten around certain platforms. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 3, we're going to finish off Ocean Base before heading off to our third zone. See you guys then.